Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even when you were completely alone? That prickling sensation on the back of your neck, the sudden chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. Most of us dismiss it. We tell ourselves it's just our imagination, an overactive mind playing tricks. But what if it's not? What if something is really there, just beyond the veil of our perception? The story I'm about to tell you is one of those times. It happened to a young urban explorer named Alex, a guy who thought he'd seen it all, until he stumbled upon a place that should have remained forgotten. Alex's hobby was exploring abandoned places, old hospitals, forgotten factories, derelict mansions, you name it. He'd probably been there, camera in hand, documenting the decay. He had a popular YouTube channel where he'd share his adventures. His viewers loved the eerie atmosphere, the history, the thrill of stepping into a world left behind. But one location, whispered about in online forums, was different. It was called the Blackwood Sanatorium, a place so infamous that even seasoned explorers were hesitant to go near it. The stories were the stuff of nightmares. Originally a tuberculosis hospital in the early 1900s, it was later converted into an asylum for the criminally insane. Tales of brutal patient mistreatment, unethical experiments, and a mysterious fire that claimed dozens of lives in the 1950s clung to its decaying walls like a shroud. The sanatorium had been abandoned ever since, left to rot in the heart of a dense, dark forest. Locals said the spirits of the tormented were trapped there, their screams still echoing through the empty halls on moonless nights. For Alex, this was the ultimate challenge. The holy grail of urban exploration. Spent weeks researching, poring over old maps and newspaper clippings, piecing together the sanatorium's grim history. Along an old service road, long overgrown, that he thought might lead him to the property. One crisp autumn afternoon, he packed his gear cameras, flashlights, extra batteries, a first aid kit, and a sense of nervous excitement. He told a friend where he was going, a standard safety precaution, and set off. Finding the sanatorium was an ordeal in itself. The service road was barely visible, a faint scar on the forest floor. He had to leave his car and hike for over an hour, pushing through thorny bushes and tangled undergrowth. The woods grew unnaturally quiet the closer he got. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, no, just the sound of his own footsteps on a carpet of dead leaves and the heavy thud of his heart. Then he saw it. Looming out of the trees like a skeletal beast, the Blackwood Sanatorium was even more imposing than the photos suggested. Its brick facade was blackened with soot and covered in ivy. Windows were shattered like vacant eyes. A wrought iron fence, rusted and twisted, encircled the property, a section of it bent just enough for a person to squeeze through. Alex took a deep breath, turned on his head-mounted camera, and slipped through the gap in the fence. The air inside the grounds was immediately colder, heavier. A sense of profound sadness hung over the place. He walked towards the main entrance, its heavy oak doors slightly ajar, as if beckoning him inside. He pushed one of the doors open, groaned on its hinges, the sound echoing through the cavernous lobby. Dust motes danced in the beams of his flashlight. The reception desk was still there, a ledger book lying open, its pages turned to brittle, yellowed wafers. To his left, a grand staircase swept upwards into darkness. To his right, a long corridor stretched into the gloom, lined with doors that were all closed. Alex decided to start with the ground floor. He moved cautiously down the corridor, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He peered into room after room. They were all in a state of advanced decay. Peeling paint, rusted bed frames, debris scattered everywhere. In one room, a child's rocking horse sat in the center, perfectly still. It sent a shiver down his spine. Why would a child's toy be in an asylum for the criminally insane? He continued deeper into the building, his initial excitement slowly being replaced by a growing sense of unease. The silence was oppressive. It wasn't just quiet, it felt watchful. He kept hearing things just at the edge of his hearing. A faint whisper, the sound of fabric dragging across the floor, a soft footstep in the corridor behind him. Every time he'd spin around, his light would reveal nothing but empty space and dust. He tried to rationalize it. It's an old building, the wind. My mind playing tricks on me. But the feeling of being watched intensified. He reached what he believed was the old infirmary. Medical equipment lay rusted and overturned. Glass vials and shattered syringes littered the floor. On a stained operating table, he saw dark, reddish-brown stains that he desperately hoped were just rust. It was here that he heard the first distinct sound, a low moan, seemingly coming from the end of the hall. Alex froze, every muscle tensed. It sounded like someone in pain. He called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" Silence. The moaning stopped. He stood perfectly still, listening. After a full minute of absolute silence, he convinced himself it must have been the wind whistling through a broken pipe. He was about to move on when he heard it again, closer this time, a soft weeping sound. It was coming from a room just ahead. Against his better judgment, he approached the room. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open slowly. The room was a private patient cell. Single, rusted bed frames stood against the far wall. On the wall above the bed, something was scrawled into the plaster. Alex shone his light on it. It was a series of frantic, overlapping scratches, but among them, one word was legible: help. As his light traced the word, a loud bang erupted from the hallway behind him. Alex jumped, spinning around. A heavy metal door to one of the cells had slammed shut. His heart was hammering against his ribs. There was no draft strong enough to do that. Someone or something had slammed that door. Panic began to set in. This was no longer fun. This was terrifying. He decided to leave. He had more than enough footage. Turned to head back the way he came, his steps quickening. But as he walked back down the long corridor, he noticed something was wrong. The doors. The doors he had passed, the ones that were all closed, were now all wide open. Every single one of them. His blood ran cold. He hadn't opened them. He was sure of it. He scanned the dark, gaping doorways with his flashlight, half expecting to see a figure standing in one of them. Nothing. He started to run. His footsteps echoed loudly in the silent hall, accompanied by another sound. The sound of other footsteps right behind him. They were light, shuffling, and they were keeping pace with him. He didn't dare look back. He just ran, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He burst back into the main lobby, his flashlight beam swinging wildly. He sprinted for the front doors, the shuffling sound getting closer, louder. He could almost feel a cold breath on his neck. He threw his shoulder against the heavy oak doors, but they wouldn't budge. They were stuck. He tried again, pushing with all his might. Nothing. He was trapped. The shuffling stopped right behind him. The air grew impossibly cold. He could hear faint, raspy breathing. He slowly turned around, his flashlight shaking in his hand. The lobby was empty. But the grand staircase. At the top of the stairs, shrouded in shadow, stood a figure. It was tall and gaunt, wearing what looked like a tattered patient's gown. It was perfectly still, just watching him. Alex couldn't make out a face, just a dark, indistinct shape. He was paralyzed with fear. He couldn't scream, couldn't move. The figure slowly began to descend the staircase, one step at a time. It didn't walk. It seemed to glide, its feet never making a sound on the dusty steps. With each step it took, a wave of despair and agony washed over Alex. So intense, it made him want to collapse. These were not his feelings. They were being projected into him. As the figure reached the bottom of the stairs and started moving across the lobby towards him, Alex's survival instinct finally kicked in. He turned away from the door and ran, blindly, down the other main corridor, the one leading to the west wing. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away. He ran through a maze of dark hallways, the figure's silent pursuit, a constant pressure behind him. He burst through a set of double doors and found himself in what looked like a large recreation room. Moonlight streamed in through a huge shattered window on the far side of the room. Freedom. He scrambled over debris towards the window, not daring to look back. He could hear the double doors behind him groaning open. He hauled himself up onto the window ledge. It was a 12-foot drop to the overgrown ground below, but he didn't care. He jumped. He landed hard, twisting his ankle, a sharp pain shooting up his leg. He ignored it, scrambling to his feet and limping as fast as he could into the dark woods. He ran and ran, not stopping until the terrifying silhouette of the sanatorium was swallowed by the trees. He didn't stop until he reached his car, fumbled for his keys, and sped away, never looking back. Alex never released the footage. He deleted his channel and never went urban exploring again. He says the memory of that night is burned into his mind. He still has nightmares about the tall, gaunt figure and the overwhelming feeling of sorrow that came with it. He claims that sometimes late at night when the house is quiet, he can still hear a faint, shuffling sound. Just outside his bedroom door. Some places are left abandoned for a reason. Some echoes of the past should never, ever be awakened. Thanks for listening, and remember to check that your doors are locked tonight. Sleep tight.